Tom, it's so good to hear from you. How are you today?
I'm doing. I'm doing well. I didn't mention their last name. Chris McDonald joins us from time to time, and sometimes we get into trouble, and sometimes we play it fairly close to the vest. But good morning. It's people tell me they like Chris McDonald because they never know what he's going to say next. So when they
never knows what he's going to say next. So it's pretty even field there, Tom. So we're good.
So that's interesting. But there's a lot of things going on in the news. We could talk all day about different things, but we'll talk 15 minutes or so, give or take a little bit. One of the things we've heard about the Paris Accord, there are lots of things President Trump is working on. Some people like, some people don't like, and many people are not going to like anything that he does. We'll talk about that as well. But what do you think is the top story this morning, Chris?
Well, I think you mentioned the Paris Climate Accord. There's two or three things that are really, I think, important to discuss today, Tom. But this Paris Accord, I've always had a barometer about things with President Trump, that when the liberals are upset about something that he's doing and they're moaning and screaming and Hollywood is going Armageddon, ballistic nuclear, and he's being called Hitler and Mussolini and the reincarnation of Genghis Khan, then usually if the liberals are acting like that, whatever he did was right. Because if they say it's wrong, usually what he did, he made the right decision. And yesterday, around 3 o'clock, he announced that the United States, he was pulling the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord agreement. Now, just to give a little background to the audience very quickly, this is an agreement that Barack Obama entered into back in 2015 without congressional approval. He never took it to Congress because he knew good and well Congress would have never approved this being in this travesty of a deal in a million years. So he circumvented Congress, which he did a lot during his 8 years, and he just basically went over there and had a rah-rah moment. All the liberals were crazy. Al Gore was having a party and celebrating and jumping up and down that, the United States had finally come on board with this climate change farce, and that's what it is. And, Tom, just some figures for your audience this morning. This agreement, for those that don't know, what it was basically going to do, it was calling for the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions and going to green energy by the year 2035. But what was going to happen, and the travesty of it all, was the United States was going to bear about 98% of the cost, while nations like China and India, who are basically more pollutants than we are, in that sense, were not even required in this treaty to do anything during that same period of time. It was going to cost the nation, it was going to be a $2.5 trillion hit to our economy. It was going to mean a loss of 400,000 jobs, mainly in the coal industry in Kentucky, West Virginia, and that area up there, just north of you, actually, in that area generally where you're at. And it was also going to affect us individually. And this is the thing that, the Barack Obama's group, they never mentioned this when they were entering this agreement and having their parties and jumping up and down and clapping and, oh, this is the greatest thing the United States has ever done in 20 years, and we're finally on board with this climate change thing. But each individual family, according to this report that came out yesterday, we were looking, each household, at an annual increase of nearly $20,000 a year by the year 2030 for our electricity cost, due to what was going to have to be done in America if we adhere to this treaty. And President Trump looked at this treaty, and he, as he always does with these things, and this is what I love about it, he saw that it was one thing, bottom line, bad for America. And he pulled us out of it. And when he sees something that's bad for the nation, he's doing those things. And I think I was very, very tickled, very happy that he did it yesterday. There was some question. He was wavering there at the end that he might not do it. But when it came to cases, it came down to what was good for the country. And that is what is important here. This deal was bad. It was more than bad for the country. But, Tom, not to get into the deep woods, because since we don't have time this morning, maybe another time, but the whole climate change thing with Al Gore and that group anyway, is a bad deal for America. America's always the one that's put on the spot in these things, and the other nations of the world are never required to obey the treaties. And, you know, Donald Trump is not president of Europe. He's president of America. He's the president of the United States. And Europe can be upset this morning all they want to be. Merkel and all that bunch, they can be screaming bloody murder and Kim Jong-un. But if North Korea, think about this, and I get back to you. If North Korea was willing to sign this thing, you know how bad a deal it was. So, I mean, that's how bad it was, that North Korea was signing it. So, I mean, this was a good day for America yesterday, what President Trump did. And he at least admitted and acknowledged that if there's a better deal that sensibly addresses the climate issue, he's willing to listen to it. But for right now, America got a break yesterday more than people will understand in a million years, that our president did a good thing and a right thing for the nation yesterday by pulling us out of this terrible treatment. Terrible treatment.
Well, you get some of these liberal states, California being one, and the governor says, well, we don't care if we have the Paris Accord or not, we're going to do it in California or whatever other state. So that's interesting to see how it develops. The country is basically torn apart at this point in time with the far left liberals and then the rest of the country. So it's playing out in most of the country. I think the vast majority of the people like what Donald Trump has done, but it's the far left that gets the press.
Exactly. Well, Tom, and you mentioned California. California is so bankrupt, it's not funny. And a good reason, because of the reason it's bankrupt, is policies just like this. It goes back to the illegal immigration issue. They are bankrupting their nation, they're bankrupting their state over policies that the liberals are putting in, claiming that they're doing all this social justice and all this stuff that they use, these terms they use and so forth. And yet it's crippling their economy, and they'll let the economy go down to where people are literally fleeing the state because they can't afford to live there for the sake of principle over a policy that don't even make sense. And that's how liberals are. And then when the country goes bankrupt, then they'll run to the federal government wanting bailouts and money, when if they would have just adhered to common sense economics and common sense policies, they wouldn't have had to do that to begin with. So you're right. It is tearing the country apart. It's a very militant movement, as we're about to talk about here in a minute, with some of the things that are going on with some certain people in Hollywood. But the whole climate change thing led by Al Gore. I was in the theater recently and I saw the trailer for this new movie, and it's just regurgitating to see the lies and the misinformation and the scare tactics and the fear mongering that this group is doing about our earth. I'm going to say something very spiritual here this morning, Tom. God is in control of this earth. God is. Not Al Gore, not the liberal left, not the loon bombs that are pushing this climate change. And God is not going to allow this planet that he created to be destroyed by man. And I don't care what man thinks is happening with a few temperature changes here or there over a course of a decade or 2 decades, the planet belongs to God. But see, the problem is a lot of liberals don't even believe in God. They don't. And that's a root cause of this climate change issue. They don't believe in a creator that controls these things. And that's why they push these agendas on the nations like they did yesterday or tried to do. And again, thank God that we've got a president with some common sense finally that looked at this and said, this is bad for the country. We don't need to be in it. And he pulled us out. I salute it today. I really do. I think it's a good day for this country. People will probably down the road, despite what the liberals are screaming, that we betrayed a generation ahead of us. No, we saved a generation ahead of us by doing what he did yesterday. We really did.
Chris McDonald joins us. It's 20 minutes after the hour. Let's switch gears right at the moment. And Kathy, what's her last name? I've got a mental block.
Kathy Griffin.
That's what I was. I was in the neighborhood. I had a mental block on that. But anyway, she is in the news. Even she says maybe I went too far. But what happened, without being too graphic? What happened? What did Kathy Griffin do, and how's that playing out in the real world?
basically, Tom, what happened, I guess it's been about 3 or 4 days ago, maybe first of the week, she and this photographer decided to do a graphic photo shoot, and she held up in the image, and it's all over the internet, she held up an image of a decapitated head that was dripping blood, and it had the facial features of President Trump. And it was almost identical, the picture was, to what the ISIS group had when they beheaded several. They always do it. They beheaded so many. But when they behead their captives on the internet, that's how ISIS holds their victims' heads up. It was identical. And this was the most despicable thing in a list of despicable things that liberal, left-wing Hollywood people have said and done over the last 6 to 8 months regarding our president. And I want to say two things about it. Number one, at first, the liberal media stood silent. But even this was so despicable, they had to chime in and say this was bad. But my question is, what would have happened had that image been a conservative individual doing that as a joke, as she claimed it was, with Barack Obama's head being in the picture? You and I both know that individual probably would have been in jail. Number two, every newspaper in America would have run the image. Number three, every television station would still be running the story 6 days later as its lead. I mean, that would be the topic of every talk show in America. And it's gotten cricket response other than the fact that the conservative networks really pounced on it, and then the liberals looked at this and said, this is even too much for us. And then they jumped on it. And then she got the backlash, and that's when she apologized. Kathy Griffin is not sorry for what she did, Tom. Kathy Griffin is sorry that the backlash hit her so bad that CNN dropped her like a hot potato. And then I know this is going to be funny, but Stocky Potty or some kind of and that's a real name. I'm not making that up. But one of the corporations that was sponsoring her dropped her too. And, that was sort of an oxymoron, Shocky Potty, considering what it was. But the thing that was horrible about the image, and I'm trying to get serious here because it's a despicable thing what she did. The hurtful thing to me was the effect it had on President Trump's 11-year-old son. There was a report out that he was watching television Monday night. He saw the image on TV, and as an 11-year-old, he thought it was real. And it shook him up so bad that it really traumatized him, according to some of the reports coming out. Melania, the First Lady, reported that, and she really spoke out hard against it. President Trump did. And, to me, Tom, you don't pick on an 11-year-old boy. This is a kid. This is a sweet youngin' that does not deserve the stuff that he's getting. Ken Jennings yesterday, the former Jeopardy champion that a lot of us remember, tweeted just a absolutely horrible tweet mocking the Barron Trump incident, basically mocking the 11-year-old boy, that his reaction to his daddy's, showing his daddy's head being decapitated on television. And this is where I really get the issue. Let me just say this, and I know our time is waning on us, but Kathy Griffin has a right to do and say whatever she wants to do in this nation because of one thing. It's a free country. We got free speech. No matter how despicable, how horrible it is, people have the right to be horrible and despicable in America. We don't have Gestapo. We don't have the communists anymore. We don't have any of that happening in America. But when you do stuff like that, the reaction is also free speech. And whatever people say about what she did is also protected by free speech. The liberals, however, they are okay with what Kathy Griffin did, but what they're not okay with today has been the backlash. And that's where the criticism from their end has been coming, that everybody's overreacting to this and it was just a joke. But I ask you again, and you and I both know that had that been Barack Obama's head in that picture, they would not be thinking it was a joke. It would have been a complete Armageddon response, and God knows what would have happened to the individual doing it. Personally, I believe the Secret Service should visit her. I do. But that's just my opinion. And that's my free speech this morning.
Well, let me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let's switch gears, and we'll take it up to about 31 minutes after the hour, which gives us about 5.5 minutes. We'll join CBS News at 31 minutes after. But there are a lot of good things in the news. The economy is is doing very well. A good number of jobs were added last month, and that's a good thing. The unemployment rate is going down, and the quality of jobs is increasing. We're going away from those minimum wage fast food jobs to actually industrial and business jobs. So what's your take on Donald Trump and the economy? We've got about 4.5 minutes.
Tom, you mentioned something. I'm glad you brought it up this morning because I saw that report come in last night over the news wires. And, it's a shame that all the narrative in the media right now is about Russia, this false narrative they're pushing, this absolute crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theory stuff. That's all they talk about. They talk about all the tawdry stuff. They try to find every single thing he does wrong. But yet our economy is surging at a rate that is unbelievable. 258,000 jobs were added in May. They were only expecting around 160 to 170. And that is an 80,000, almost 100,000 more jobs created than they expected. That is a huge, huge number. And as you said, they're not just McDonald's $8 an hour jobs or, part-time jobs like that. These are corporate jobs that people are making, several $100,000 a year, 20, 30,000. I mean, these are real jobs that really the economy needs to get it back going. And a lot of it has to do with the anticipation, I believe, of his tax plan that is coming sometime this year. And again, with Congress, we've talked about this many times. President Trump has done everything possible, Tom, on his end to get the country back on track from a disastrous track it was headed down during the Obama years. But he's only one man. He cannot do this by himself. Congress has got to get off their backsides, and they have got to get working, get this Obamacare repeal and replace bill finished, and get it sensibly done. And then we've got this tax reform that President Trump wants is going to be, they say, in one of the most massive tax cuts that we've had probably since going back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt days and, post-World War II days. And this is going to be a major deal. And again, I think that in itself, too, is going to jolt the economy. The burdensome Obamacare is going to be taken off these businesses. And I think they're seeing that they're banking on the fact that these things are going to be done under his administration. And it is good to see. And I don't know how you see it up there. I know we got about 2 minutes. I sense an optimism among the common people out here in America, mainstream America. People are not naive enough to believe that Donald Trump's going to save the country, Tom, because Donald Trump's one man. I've told you many times on this program, and I'll say it to our audience again this morning, we the people are responsible for our country, not Donald Trump. We the people are. The country that we want to have is the country we're going to get. And we elect leaders, and we expect them to do our bidding for us up there. And I really believe that what he's done with his tax plan and these policies are again, generating optimism and people seeing that things are going to get better down the road. They may not get better right away, but down the road, there's coming thing. We had a record, they said yesterday, at 4 o'clock when the closing bell was at Wall Street, and when he announced that climate change deal, that took an economic burden off the country. The stock market hit a record high yesterday. So the stock market is doing tremendously well. I mean, they've never seen this run. This thing's over 21,000 right now. And the NASDAQ, everything has been up during his tenure. The media in this country is so corrupt, though. It has said nothing about the good stuff. It's always been about the bad, and it's terrible. I know we got to go. Can I mention one quick thing before we go this morning? One thing I do wish he will do, and I mentioned this to you, we'll maybe come back another time and discuss it. He needs to fulfill his pledge to move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and Israel. I know he don't want to do it right now because of political pressure, but Donald Trump needs to listen to the politicians in Washington. He needs to listen to his heart. He needs to listen to God about this because the Jerusalem city is the capital of Israel, and that's where our embassy needs to be to let the United States recognize the fact that Jerusalem is the capital of the nation of Israel. And that's where I stand with that this morning. It's been a good talk.
I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. You have a great day, and we'll talk later. And okay, we appreciate it. Thank you. AM 74 W.